What happened to the bad kids you went to school with? The girl that was my worst bully is in prison on murder charges. She and her boyfriend robbed a bowling alley she worked at and killed her boss. The rest are strippers or are in and out of the prison system. Guy I went to Catholic school with killed his elderly female neighbor with a hammer. He was executed about 5 years ago. Jesus. Stoner. Guitar playing band boy TM now is a professor with tenure at a prestigious university. Teaches music theory, so at least that is consistent. Yeah, the biggest stoner in our class received an award at the end of senior year for having a 4.0 all 4 years of high school. The teachers weren't really sure why we were all giggling when they called his name. One guy who picked on me in high school ended up working under me a couple years later. I was like 20 and basically led hand for a small shift of overnight workers at a blue collar plant. Having all the maturity of your typical 20-year-old, I always gave him the shittiest tasks until he finally quit. Taught me 2 lessons. First, petty revenge is fun. Second, it is probably best if I don't hold management type positions. Our petty revenge would like you. One just got arrested for stealing a cop's gun and giving it, not selling, just giving it away, to a convict who was on parole for gun violations. 10 or so have already had kids and have moved to random parts of the country. One died of HOD. One committed suicide. Most actually just work at auto shops. As far as I know. Source: I used to hang out with a lot of the bad kids. I've managed to find a few of the ones I knew on Facebook, and the 10 years since high school seems to have changed some, others not so much. The biggest bully of my class is serving a very lengthy sentence for beating a cop until he was a quadriplegic. The second biggest bully I knew is doing some type of construction job, and seems to be doing pretty well for himself, with a wife and 2 kids. The biggest stoner I knew joined the Marine Corps, which is pretty surprising. He has a lot of pictures of himself doing outdoorsy type things. The goth kid who everyone thought would go Columbine is now working at a pizza place. Still looks pretty goth-like. Guess it wasn't just a fad. The rich mean girls type pretty girl is still rich. And still pretty. Her boyfriend looks a lot like Ryan Gosling. She's a nurse now. Biggest shocker was the frick this place guy. He's doing a long prison sentence for beating an off-duty cop until he was a quadriplegic. Biggest bully I ever knew. Still never thought he'd go that far. A lot of police beat into quadriplegics like holy crap. A kid who couldn't maintain academic standards for our freshman football team, no Fs, and was well known to be into the school drug trade now has 40k Twitter followers and wrote several articles for Playboy. I thought for far too long about the relationship between Warhammer and Playboy. I am very tired. There was a kid from my elementary school who lived 2 doors down from my childhood home. He who would bully me and my family incessantly for the better part of a decade when I was younger. It was terrible. He would pick on me and brother on our walks home from school, throw garbage at our house, call us names, carry out minor acts of vandalism on our house. Just general stupid crap that kids do. I think he came from a broken home. And his mother, no sign of the father, would just sit and sunbathe and watch all this crap go down. Good parenting. The kid dropped out of high school a year or 2 in and basically became a bum and all potential substance abuser. A few years ago I learned that he was living and partying it up in Thailand. Apparently, he was pulled under a train and died. The circumstances are unclear, but the rumor is that drugs and or alcohol may have been involved. Upon learning this, I didn't feel anything in particular. Kind of like, oh, okay, I didn't necessarily wish bad things to happen to him, but I can't say that I was all too surprised to learn of his fate. You reap what you sow, I guess. It's a real shame that he didn't make better choices in life. Not long after that, I learned that the kid's older brother, not as much of a bully, as I recall, was killed in a motor vehicle collision in Malaysia. Now, that's really unfortunate. Altogether there were 3 kids in that family. The 2 boys and the girl. The girl was in my class at school. I wonder how she's doing. I hope she's okay. From what I remember, she seemed cool, for the most part. Except for that one time she chased me around with a water gun on the street in front of my house. I'm gonna be honest, if I could choose my way to go, partying in Thailand would be somewhere at the top of the list. Whenever I had a bad day at school with bullies, my mother used to tell me about a kid that pulled her hair in grade school and bullied her all the time. She used to relate with a calm smirk that about 5 years out of high school he was found shot to death in the trunk of a car. I always thought she had something to do with it or wished she had. Nah, she's just oddly attached to a very petty grudge. The one guy that bullied me ended up working for Chick-fil-A and is now a district manager for the franchisee in the area. He has a nice wife and is expecting. I ran into him a few years ago. He apologized for being a dong to me. Apparently he was angry at the time because I was in both the special education classes and the gifted and talented program. He was just in the special ed classes. He's way more successful than me now. I don't dislike him or anything. It just goes to show what motivation and a good work effort can get you. I wish him all the best. One kid, never even graduated, lives down the road from me. I can't even make up some of the ridiculous crap he does. His driver license is suspended, so I've seen him riding around on a chopper bicycle. It's decked out in Shapire drawings, an American flag jabbed into the seat, and I believe a Romney Ryan sticker. Most recently I walked past his house and saw a plastic chair, table, and a grill perched up on the garage roof. It beats me how he managed to get it all up there. Ah, yes, the DUI lifestyle. I will always remember a guy who used to pick on me in school. It started in elementary when he'd pick on my friends and I'd try to stand up for them, so he'd just pick on me. He was such a jerk and was unliked by virtually everyone. In high school I remember finding out that he had killed himself by hanging himself with his father's tie. Supposedly his dad was more concerned about the tie than his own son. It really made me wish I had just tried to talk to him. As they say, hurt people, I'll never forget him. His dad was more concerned about the tie than his own son. Holy crap. Well, one of the bad kids I used to hang with is a skinhead with 5 kids. So, yay, another is dead. He was tweaking and ran onto the freeway and was hit by like 5 cars. This was in the mid-90s. Everyone else is dong alright, although it's kind of freaking me out how many people have died from cancer at this point. Everyone else is dong alright. Back when I was still dating my wife, so, pre-marriage, her brother introduced me to his best friend, who I got pretty close with. We had a lot in common, played music together, had the same sense of humor and smoked weed together. One day we got pretty high and he told me about the horrible people he went to high school with and brought up this girl who was like the Regina George of his high school, except in his words, worse. She was elitist, a bully, and scarred a lot of kids in school with her mean remarks regarding their style choice, social standing and family's financial instability. I could relate, so I told him my story about a similar girl who went to high school with me. We then compared our stories and came to the conclusion that his Regina George was worse. Fast forward a few years later to a few months ago, I find out that his Regina George is my wife. So yeah. I bullied someone in high school. Badly. Years later I called him up and apologized. And so he crossed your name off of his people to kill list. The worst one was a Kurdish guy. In elementary school he was like, "Do you think I am stronger? Let's fight." He had always aggression problems. Later in high school, he was already a criminal. Beat people and stole their cell phones. Sold them. He changed schools but he was still notorious. He was involved in a huge fight in front of my school. They hit each other with wooden batons. It was crazy. One had even a blank gun, which is a big deal in Germany because we don't have free weapons and stuff. He was in juvenile prison. In his early 20s he was a C addict and sold drugs. I once saw him with a real thug type with a white Porsche. That was when he thought he's untouchable because he know the tough guys. He and his mates beat the Africans who owned the park and a nearby subway station where they sold drugs. He forced some of them to sell for him. You would always see him with fancy cars drifting through the streets and stuff. Always on the white powder. Things changed when he kicked the door in of a big drug dealer who lives with wife and kids. He's the kind of shabby guy but knows everyone in the city. Spent lots of time in prison and has protection from the local bandidos. This Kurdish guy didn't know that. Tried to break in but failed. The drug dealer did not expect that such a small timer breaks into his flat. He thought some real bad guys are coming. He hid wife and kid. called some people and looked for that Kurdish guy. He found him and that guy got the worst beating ever. They kidnapped him and his Turkish friend, who was a same thug, and drove them to a roadhouse in Belgium, where they stripped of their clothes and left them naked somewhere on a Belgium highway. After this incident, they knew they cannot frick around with the big guy. The Turkish dude died a few years ago when he jumped from a building while escaping from the cops. He punched a taxi driver and ran away because he didn't have money. Since then, the Kurd became legal, opened his shisha cafe which failed. Since then no one ever heard of him. Rumors say he went back to school to get his university entrance qualification. He didn't graduate high school after he got caught cheating on a final. At 19 years old he was in a DUI accident that killed a good friend of mine. He did 18 months for involuntary manslaughter. He's been in and out of jail for the last 10 years on various drug charges and probation violations. Some got pregnant and never got a chance to pursue careers. Some grew up, regretted their actions and made something of themselves. Some got a low-paying job and just live day to day, and all of that is fine. Really, it's cool, even. I'm happy for them all. Hard drugs, pregnant has a baby, still stuck in our hometown, or all of the above. One guy got sucked into a pyramid scheme. I haven't seen him since I moved. Wonder how that's going. My worst bully got kicked out of our high school, much to my relief. He was awful and truly delighted in seeing me cry on a daily basis. I learned later from a classmate that he tried to snort paint thinner and ended up with brain damage or something to that effect. Yikes. Jamie dropped out and had a couple of kids. Mark lives at home cause he's not go job, just plays guitar and smokes a lot of pot. Jay committed suicide. Brandon OD'd and died. I married him. He was one of the big stoners from my high school. I was the typical band nerd, graduated with honors from HS and college. We were pretty opposite, personality wise. We met up again by chance 3 years after our high school graduation. He had really matured and stopped smoking by that time. He turned out to be quite the charmer. I was thinking about some American Pie reference at the beginning. Good for you. Some of them are doing surprisingly well, none of them going to college but holding down jobs. I do have a bigger story about one, though. There was a kid in my high school who used to gamble a lot and ended up getting lent a lot of money. This was around 10th-11th grade, around 5-6 grand. He didn't pay it back, and word got around that he was being looked for by a bunch of drug dealer types. Last thing I heard was that he set someone on fire after an argument and headed straight to state pen. He's a quarterback at Oregon now. I'm pretty sure the bad kid deal was an act so that we would leave him alone so he could play the guitar. I wish the dude the best of luck. The couple that made a DVD of their prom night and sold it on the internet didn't make it. Shocker. He's a youth minister now. She's a stay-at-home mom with fibromyalgia. I'm sure I spelled that wrong, but I'm too lazy to Google it and not lazy enough to now write out this explanation. Our school didn't have bad kids in the sense that they bullied people, as far as I know. Most of the popular kids though now have multiple kids and no job, are divorced, about to be divorced, or have baby daddies mamas. They also post things on Facebook that, although amusing, is pretty sad when you really think about it. Most of them work some sort of manual labor construction or welding job and have 2-3 kids and a wife in rural North GA. Hello neighbor. Hey went off the deep end with drugs and crap, was in a coma for a while. Now he runs a redemption center near where I live and seems to have his crap together. Happy for him. Not really a post about how his life turned out, but in 5th grade kids were starting to call each other gay and other words as insults. I hadn't hit puberty yet and my voice was still very feminine. Well, these kids started targeting me because we were all in the same class. They pushed my friends away from me because they didn't want to be associated with a gay. Things were pretty rough but didn't affect me because I didn't really care yet what people thought of me. Fast forward through about 10th grade, these same group of kids were the cool kids, played football, were pretty popular, attractive, had wealthy parents, etc. They still picked on me until I eventually came out, and then all of a sudden no one cared because they couldn't pick on me for something that everyone knew. So there I was, 19 years old, playing WoW at my mom's house after I dropped out of college, and one of these guys messages me at 3 in the morning. I was like WTF, and then I kept on talking to him. He seemed okay considering we had never really had a real conversation in the 12+ years we had known each other. This happened a few more times until eventually he wanted to hang out. Well, there he was in my bedroom at 4 in the morning. We had sex, and then he left. Hasn't talked to me since. TLDR. Grade school gay basher came to my house at 4 AM and we had sex. Fellow bad kid here. I vandalized my school extensively when I was in grade 9 with a friend one night and caused $90,000 in damages to the school by turning off their HVAC units in the middle of winter. I was obviously expelled and had to go on youth probation and pay a fine, and it was a crappy time. So I think I qualify as the bad kid of the school. Anyways, where am I now? Because of the youth probation, I was ordered to do 50 hours of community service. I went to a YMCA, or a boys and girls club of my town, volunteered to be their IT administrator, and got the experience on my resume, which landed me another 2 years at an IT company doing Windows 7 deployments and break fix of desktop, laptop and printer hardware. I have now completed my second round of interviews at an accounting firm as their local IT guy. I really don't regret what I have done, as it has helped me gain the experience needed to get my foot in the door with my career. Over the years I've heard of or bumped into the bullies from my high school and primary school. Some are dead, some are morbidly obese. A slim minority picked up their acts and actually became worthwhile members of society. One in particular is now couch surfing, always briefly because people get sick of him quickly, has been shot at least once, pisses off the wrong people, is going from job to job as he keeps getting fired, and even his parents wants nothing to do with him anymore. It makes me so happy. That may be a mean thing to say, but he made my life heck. The bully from my grade school is actually a pretty good guy. He still has a temper, but when I got to talk to him, he's actually pretty cool. He's a traffic enforcer at our hometown now. He lived up the street from me in this dumpy little house with his dumpy mother. He was always in butthole but found himself being a volunteer fireman. A couple years after we graduated, I hear that he was arrested in West Virginia for arson. Turns out he would set the fire, then go back to the station and wait for it to get called in. He would then go fight his own fires. I'm a stoner. Never was a bully though, and don't consider myself a bad kid for being a stoner. I am now studying to be an actuary at college. For those who don't know what that is, it's basically statistics applied to finance, and have an average of about 9.0 out of 10. Some got good jobs, some didn't. Some sell drugs, others are using them. Turns out their lives weren't defined during high school. That's brilliant and all, but we're here for stories. One went to prison for armed robbery of multiple gas stations. Another shot himself when confronted by police for drug possession intent to sell. He died. Also, one of the bullied kids committed suicide. I graduated in 2014. Jesus frick. The kid was a typical redneck, about 2 years ahead of me, and a giant dong to everyone. Got called up to do some farm work last summer in my hometown. And guess who happened to be called in as well? I hated him in high school, but after seeing him again, I just pity him. The guy has no prospects and no real skills to get anywhere, and he's still a raging butthole. No clue. I keep in touch with no one from high school. Absolutely no one. No one from middle school, either. No one from elementary, either. This guy is probably the exception, but he had a really rough time of pretty much everything. Anyway, he definitely did not give a crap going into high school. He didn't even expect to graduate, but our PASS program, basically classes for troubled kids, had a couple of teachers that proved to him they cared, and taught him that he could do what he dreamed of. They were the people that turned him from school doesn't matter to I can do this. Education is the only way to reach my dream. And he received a scholarship on senior awards night and then graduated a month later. He is going to college in the fall. There are also plenty of kids from my school who never figured out how to care, but to be honest, I'm not gonna remember them, but I will remember this kid. One of them got busted making M in his dorm room. He got caught because apparently it never occurred to him to make sure his roommate was cool with it. They had to find other housing for everyone in the dorm because of the risk from all the toxic fumes. One of the ones I didn't particularly like spent about 3 years locked up. Now he works in a kitchen and probably will forever. One of the guys that I thought was a good kid ended up going out with one of his friend when they were 15 and killing a retarded guy walking down the street for the like $10 in his pocket. The bad boys of my school were the popular kids. A few of them actually got really fat and hang around the shops near my old high school, trying to retain their popularity. A few went to college that I'm currently attending, but they aren't even taking classes, just walking around looking for the next person they know to talk to. The truth is that it doesn't matter how popular you are in school, that crap doesn't apply in the real world and it sure ain't going to get you a good job. Joined the military because what the heck else were they going to do? Return to society as heroes eventually. Now they spend their days complaining to Facebook about how they can't find any kind of decent jobs. I am very pro-military and this is not meant to bash them, but the vast majority of morons and freak-ups from my high school joined the military. She has 4 kids, is dating a gang member, in and out of prison and definitely a drug addict. Guess you can say she deserved it. Guy who bullied me all through middle school and high school bagged my groceries and helped me load them into my car. He thought my car was nice, pointed out his beat up pickup truck in the lot. I tipped him $10 and waited until I was on the road to laugh hysterically. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.